So it's really this pyramid, right? This money is the first objective. Customers become objective number 2, and our people become objective number 3. That's pretty much how most businesses are derived. What I went in with, and the owner shared this vision with me, is what if we do it the other way?
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Impact, Income, and Influence, the #1 place for monetization strategy on the internet. My name's Steve Werner, and I am joined today by Glen Lundy, who is the host of Rise and Grind. It is the #1 show to get up in the morning and listen to start your day off with amazing motivation. But behind that, Glen trains car dealerships, and he works with the biggest and best car dealerships in the United States to grow amazing company culture, which 10 years ago you would have never heard of. But Glen is revolutionizing the automotive industry and early mornings. Glen, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing this space and time with me. It means a lot to me.
No problem. I am so excited to have you here and to talk about how you build amazing culture and how you're changing sales industry. But it wasn't always like that. Can you take us back to the beginning and kind of tell us where your tipping point was? Where did all this start and how did you grow it?
Yeah, so I kind of have two seasons of my life, 2 seasons in my career, two major seasons. So I spent my 20s to 30s, causing trouble, running, chasing. If it looked good and it felt good, the answer was yes. And that was kind of how I spent that season. And during that season of life, I spent 7 years in the automotive industry. And in those 7 years, I was very successful in my career, but I was very opposite of successful in my life outside of work, which ultimately led me to losing custody of my 6-year-old daughter when I was about 26 years old. And so that was kind of a tipping point. When I lost my daughter, I went down a bit of a journey that led me to depression, drugs, alcohol, those types of things. Burned a lot of bridges, traveled around multiple cities, ultimately landed on the beaches of San Diego, California, where I was homeless for a short period of time. That homelessness led to hopelessness, which led to further depression, suicidal thoughts, ideas, and actually attempted at one point to take my life. And that failed clearly, because if you were talking to me and that would have been successful, that would be really weird for your listeners.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so after that season, that was kind of one season for me. And during that season, when I was in the automotive industry, I was successful, but our dealership as a whole really didn't grow at all. We basically sold the same amount of cars the day I started as we did 7 years later. We maintained, we kept our head above water, but no real massive success. So then there's a second season. So this is my 30s to 40s after the homelessness, the suicide attempt, all of those things. I moved to Kentucky and I started over fresh, brand new. I literally moved to Kentucky with $1,500 cash and a suitcase and really bad credit and a whole lot of burned bridges and maybe a warrant or two that still existed in different counties around the United States of America. So when I first moved to Kentucky, it really was kind of coming from scratch. And I didn't know anyone except for one guy I had met at a bar 8 months before, and we had stayed in touch. And his name was Aaron Jones. And he had said that he needed a roommate. He was trying to get his own place, move out of his sister's house. And so we thought it's a great idea. Glenn will move to Kentucky. We'll get our own place and we'll both start over new. And we did, and we made lots of mistakes. I'm a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of guy, or at least I was in that season of my life. And so in Kentucky, I got a fresh start, met a woman, had my second child. And when I had my second child, something hit me bro, you are about to do the same exact thing again unless you make a massive change. And so I got back into the automotive world, but this time I had a mission. And the mission was that I was going to make an impact in this industry, that I was going to flip it upside down on its head, and I was going to create an environment of growth and value and culture and all of those things that I could thrive, not just in the auto industry, but be able to thrive at home as well with my new bride and our child and so on and so forth. Um, and so, yeah, so that was kind of the tipping point in that moment. And since then, we've had a season of massive, very blessed success.
So I want to like just reframe what I'm hearing and like hold up a mirror. So you're homeless in San Diego. First, you start off, you're selling, you're doing great. It was in Arizona, I believe. You're killing it, but you're probably doing a lot of things that, are a little excessive, and you're
Totally.
not feeling fulfilled inside, which eventually the outside has to catch up to the inside. And you end up homeless in San Diego, and somehow you get out of that situation, you go to Kentucky. Like, what caused you to leave San Diego and go to Kentucky? Because that's where I actually see like the first glimmer of like, I need to do something.
Yeah, sure. So while I was in San Diego, there was a short stint where I'd gotten a job for a company called 2020 Companies. And 2020 Companies sent me over to the East Coast. They sent me all over the country. I traveled with them for 6 months, just opening sales offices. So this was when fiber optics first came out, and people could now bundle cable, phone, and internet all together. And it was a big deal. And so I would go and I would open sales offices and put some motivational signs on the walls, make sure they had a printer and a computer and a little couch that made it look like they'd been in business for more than a day. And then once we did that, I would hand the keys over to a guy, and he would recruit a bunch of kids in the neighborhood and send them out going door to door, going, sign here, we're going to bundle your stuff. Sign here, we're going to bundle your stuff. And then I would move to the next place and rent another place. So I was in Lexington for 3 weeks in a hotel on an assignment. And while I was in Lexington, Kentucky, some pretty amazing things happened. I met Aaron Jones, who ultimately later we became roommates. But also while I was out here, when you're in the car business, you always look at license plate frames because you want to look and see who's selling the most cars in the neighborhood. And I was looking at license plate frames, and it kept saying Glen on all the license plate frames because there's a large auto mall in Lexington's Glen Auto Mall. And so I kept seeing my name on license plates. And then I would look around and I would see Lundy's Catering. The biggest, largest catering company in Lexington is Lundy's Catering. So everywhere I'm looking, it's like Glen Lundy, Glen Lundy, Glen Lundy, just all these like flashing signs. And so I thought it was cool here. The cost of living was awesome. People were really kind and welcoming. And so later, fast forward, I'm in San Diego, and Aaron reaches out to me and connects. I think we connected through MySpace or something back then, whatever it was. But he reaches
MySpace.
out. Yeah. I'm aging myself now. So he reaches out and he's like, hey, man, what are you doing with your life? And my response was absolutely nothing. Like nothing. He was like, dude, you got to move to Kentucky. And so, yeah, so I jumped on that opportunity and made my way back.
Nice. And you had this memory of these signs calling
Oh,
your
yeah.
name. It's like the universe was planting seeds for you, right?
No doubt, man. I've
So
never felt more at home. Like from the moment I moved here, I've always felt like Kentucky was home. Even when I lived in Flagstaff, Arizona for um, 21 years, from like age 5 to age 26, and I never felt like it was home. Even when I visit it now, I don't feel like it was. Like I have memories there, but it just didn't feel like home, man. Kentucky's home. Always was, and always will be, probably.
nice. That's it. I think it's interesting how we know that when we're in the right place. So you get to Kentucky, you've got this new roommate, you've got $1,500, you've got a suitcase, and somehow you come up with the vision of not only am I going to go back and sell cars, but I'm going to be on a mission to revolutionize the way that it works. Because I mean, if we can be honest, car sales doesn't have the best reputation, or definitely didn't 10 years ago.
Sure.
People like you are changing that. So where did this mission come from? You had another child, you're getting married. A lot of people would say that, that's a lot to take up your bandwidth, your mental bandwidth right there. But somehow you come up with this mission of, I'm not just going to sell cars again. I'm going to get into it and I'm going to change the world through selling cars, because I know that having a mission is where it all starts. If you want to have an impact, if you want to really make a difference, you have to treat it like you're on a mission, whatever that is. There's baking cakes or selling cars, whatever. But where did that come from? And like, how did you like stick to it? Because I know so many people are sitting at home on a couch and they're like, I would love to have a mission.
Well, it really came out of, so I blamed the car business for a lot of stuff. Um, Prior to that, I hated the car business. I didn't want anything to do with the car business. I was never going to get back in the car business. And so I spent that first couple of years in Kentucky doing some odd jobs. And then I created my own free poker league. And so I was hanging out in bars and restaurants. I was basically like a karaoke guy, but instead of doing karaoke, I was doing free poker. And I was partying every night, doing all of those things. And that's where I met my wife. She was a bartender at a bar. Well, yeah, I guess she would have to be a bartender at a bar, because otherwise she wouldn't be a bar. Like, where else does a bartender bartend, right? They bartend at bars. So,
Applebee's?
I guess. So I met my wife at a bar. She was the bartender, and we ran really fast and really hard, and it wasn't long at all. And she was pregnant 3 months after we met, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I am about to go through the same cycle, and I'm going to lose custody of this kid if I don't make this kid a priority, because I didn't make my other kid a priority and lost custody when she was 6 years old. And so I knew I couldn't do the nightlife free poker thing anymore because I had a kid, and the only thing I really was good at was cars. It was the only thing. I was always really good at it. And so I basically just sat down and wrote out everything that I hated about the car business as an employee. And then I wrote down everything that I hated about the car business as a consumer. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to go back to this business that I hate, if I'm going to do that, then I am going to have to change it from the inside out so that it can be conducive to me having a good relationship with my wife and my children. And so I don't end up homeless again on the side of a street wanting to kill myself. So really that was my fuel, was fear of going back to that place, that horrible, dreadful, awful place. And so I had to create a system. I had to create something mentally, almost like Jordan talks about in The Last Dance, where he talks about, like, they talk about how he would create mental fuel. And so I had to create mental fuel. If I'm going back in the industry, I'm going to freaking change it from the inside out. I'm going to do the exact opposite of everything on this list. And the only way I would ever be able to do the exact opposite of what was on that list was to get myself into a position of power. And so I started in sales, and then within 4 months, sales manager, and then, not long after, general sales manager, not long after, GM. And all along the way, each level of power, I started implementing more change, more strategy, more change. And I started building soldiers, bro. I'm like, you come with me, bro. We're going to the top. Come on. I'll develop you. I'll pour into you. You're a winner. You're a champion. And just continued surrounding myself with great people as we climbed all the way to the top. And ultimately, we're able to become the second largest used car franchise dealership in the country in a tiny little town, population 9,600. So by doing that, I established a name for myself in the auto industry. A lot of people, paid attention once we were doing big, big, big numbers. And that created an opportunity for me to leave that dealership a couple years ago. And now I get to work with dealerships. I'm working with 46 different dealerships currently all across the nation, helping them implement strategies that can help them develop and increase their volume, their profitability, their employee retention, and ultimately the culture in their dealership.
That is like, that's truly amazing. And I love like that journey, because you got on a mission, you started moving. And when we're on a mission, right, when we start moving, we attract people, right? Because
Totally.
people are like, what's that guy doing? I want what he's got. So I want to talk about right at the beginning, when you went back, the first thing that I heard you say that I want to point out for listeners, like if you read between the lines, you took personal responsibility. You said, I felt like I hated the dealerships for all these things that they had done to me. I hated my life in the past. But then I realized that if it's going to be, it's up to me. Like,
That's right.
I have to take the responsibility. It's not the dealership's fault. It's not that person's fault. It's not that job's fault. Who makes the decisions, right? It's me, it's Glenn. So you took that responsibility and you said, okay, if I'm going to go back, I'm going to do it my way. What can I do to make it better? You took that personal responsibility and you started making choices, which is amazing. When you started, I'm sure you felt some resistance, both internally, because your body's not used to making decisions like that, right? Your body's like, who are you? Like, who that for you? Like,
Totally.
we all have that voice in our mind sometimes. It's like, what, dude, you should be sitting on the couch eating ice cream and potato chips. This isn't, you're supposed to be at a bar playing poker. What are you doing right now?
That's right.
So how did you overcome that voice? Because changing that mental pattern is what allowed you to then, once you change that, it was like a ship taking off, right?
Yeah, totally, man. It's a complete reprogram. You have to completely reprogram take whatever age you are, times however many days in a year, times however many hours in a day, times however many minutes in an hour, times however many seconds in a minute. And that will tell you how many inputs that you've accumulated over your lifetime. You've been programming your thought processes from the instant you were born, every second of every day. And so the only way I could break out of that is I now had to start consuming ridiculous amounts of content to try to reprogram the 30 years of nonsense that I had plugged in my brain. And so I could be found at any given time, and still to this day can be found at any given time, with an Audible in my ear, a video in my ear, Maxwell, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Eric Thomas, Les Brown, Nick, all the guys, all the the Bob Proctors, and Jim Rohn's, and just all of them, dude. Brene Brown, you name it, dude. I'm always seeking content, and it's just reprogramming. That's all it is. 30 minutes a day. At first, for me, it was like hours a day, man. I'd sit there and absorb for like 4 hours. Just like, now I got like 8 kids, so I'm lucky if I get like 4 minutes. But it literally, I had to reprogram everything that I thought I knew about myself, the universe, spirituality, energy, all of that stuff, financial intelligence, emotional intelligence, subconscious mind, conscious mind, all of it, man. I became a student, and luckily we live in such an incredible time where we have access to all of this stuff for free, dude. Like, as long as you got an internet connection, you can tap into the minds of the most brilliant human beings on the face of the planet. And so, yeah, so
That's awesome.
crash course in mind reprogramming.
Was there one or two, like when you got started, I know you said you're consuming hours. I myself, like, somebody gave me a copy of Tony Robbins' Personal Power 2, and I would just go for walks and listen to it.
Sure.
I didn't have a job at the time. I quit my job managing a restaurant because I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it was. I literally just would go for like 4-hour walks. So that one sticks out to me, and Jim Rohn. Those are the two that I always go back to. What's the one that you remember being like, oh man, that's like gold?
Dude, there's 100. Like, I really love it. Like, I'm a junkie, dude. I'm addicted. I love it. There are some books that I go back and read multiple times a year. uh, since I started this journey. And the reason I do that, I read a quote once that said, rereading a book, the words on the page don't ever change, but your perspective of them does, right? And that's so true, so powerful. I can reread the same books and I get something new out of it every single time. So I kind of went down this like weird little journey, right? I believe that our frequencies, I understand now that our frequencies, the things we focus on, the things that we believe ultimately attract what we need or what can be helpful to break us through that, right? I totally believe that now. And so when I was first getting going and I was still kind of like the party dude and I was still kind of like a little maybe still a little bit of a victim mindset still, I used to listen to like a bunch of Les Brown, right? Les Brown was like born on the floor of an abandoned building, giving up on the first day of my life. I've fought every minute. Life will be a struggle, right? Les is like, but there's greatness in you, and I really needed that for a long period of time. So I read a lot of Les Brown books and so on and so forth. Then I kind of moved to Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas, E.T. the hip hop preacher, and he's a little more young and strappy and cool and like, let's go fight, right? Like Les Brown was like, you're gonna be okay, and then Eric Thomas is like, we're gonna make it okay. We're gonna go out there and tackle the world. And I needed that during that season. And then I kind of moved on from there, and I went to this thing called, I'm sure The Secret with Bob Proctor.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I learned about the law of attraction, and that was huge for me. And I read Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard, which is actually the core book that's used in Scientology. And I studied that for a while, for about 6 months, found out that the religion side of it wasn't for me, but I learned so much from Dianetics itself.
That book
About
is
conscious mind, subconscious mind, and fight or flight and all those things, and why we do the things we do, and so on and so forth. So that was really powerful. And then I read this book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And that book freaked me out and blew my mind all at the same time. I don't even know if I can recommend that book to anyone, but at the same time, I recommend that book to everyone.
you just know it's going to
one of the
make
most
them.
controversial books in the Christian world, because this guy, Neil Donald Walsh, really believes, and I believe him as well, that he had a conversation with God, and he asked him a lot of the questions that we all want to know, and he got responses, and he wrote them in a book. And some of the responses people don't agree with. There's one line in the book where God tells Neil Donald Walsh that Hitler's in heaven, right? It's a very interesting read. But what it taught me is not to put God in a box. That's what it really taught me. We try to humanize everything. You look at the front of a car and you're like, oh, that looks like a happy face. You see something in a pizza, you're like, oh, there's a person in the pizza. Like, we try to humanize literally everything psychologically. And so we've done the same thing with the master, the creator of the universe. And so it helped me to see that. As far as direct books, Think and Grow Rich, obviously I reread that every single year. How to Win Friends and Influence People, I reread that every single time I'm getting ready to go meet someone new, whether it be a new prospect or anything like that. I reread it every single time. There's a book called 3 Feet from Gold that was written by Sharon Lechter that I highly suggest everyone on the planet read. It's a Napoleon Hill. So Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. There was a chapter that got left out of the book called Outwitting the Devil. Sharon Lechter worked for the Napoleon Hill organization. Sharon Lechter's a friend of mine now. She worked for the organization. They found this chapter called Outwitting the Devil that Napoleon Hill's wife would not let him publish because it was so controversial in the time. So Sharon took it, remastered it, released it, And then after that, ended up writing this book called 3 Feet from Gold. So yeah, man, those are some of the ones I would suggest.
That's awesome. 3 feet, or not 3 feet from gold. Outwitting the Devil is right there on my shelf.
Hey,
That's a
nice.
great book. I read all the time, and you are recommending great ones. Conversations with God, I would recommend to anyone. I love reading things that I don't always agree with, because it
Right.
forces me to think. I don't have to agree with the person. You're allowed to have your own thoughts.
No doubt.
We can, like, that's what makes us smarter. So I want to circle back to the conversation. So you're on fire. You're reprogramming your mind. You're going through a couple hours a day of personal development, of self-growth. You go back and you work at the car lot. I am sure I worked at a car lot when I was 19, 20, and 21. I can tell you the things that went on there, like they belong in like the dark section of the bookstore, right? Like
Vegas, baby.
yeah. I mean, we got things going on in the restrooms, in the shop. We got stuff going on over in the closet. Like, the culture there was make a lot of money and drink so much that you don't remember anything. Always let the customer drive the car. How,
Right.
like, so you start changing this. You go in there on your mission and you start attracting some people to you. What was the response you got from the people that were above you at the dealership? I mean, sure, you're making sales, you're growing, but how did things start happening?
So the store that I went into, I was blessed. The store that I went into was owned by um, an incredible gentleman who had some real family values, and so it was a family values hometown country store is what it was. It had wood panels on the walls. They had lawn tables and lawn chairs in the showroom. They've been selling 110 120 cars a month for the last 50 years. Third generation owners in a podunk little town. So it didn't have the, you didn't have the cocaine runs in between the car deals. You didn't have a whole lot of that, but we did have a whole lot of Carhartt uh, overalls and flannel shirts, and some good old boys that were working in that place. And so I showed up dressed like I am today, which is in a jacket and a tie. And I wore a jacket and a tie every day when I was in that dealership. And very quickly, I had one of the gentlemen. He's a good friend of mine now, and so don't take this the wrong way. He's got a sense of I have a sense of humor, and so does he. But he took me around the side of the building talking one time. I'd only been there a couple months selling cars, and he said, "Boy, you keep wearing that tie around here, we might just hang you from it."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, great!" But guess what? The tie didn't come off. It didn't come off, because that told me, okay, if he's paying attention, because he's just a good old boy, right? If he's paying attention, they're paying attention. If he's feeling that kind of pressure, then we're doing something right. We're about to crack this thing. And so I just laser focused, bro, head down. Don't get in my way. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make an impact. And that mindset alone, like, I didn't get anybody else's way and nobody got in my way. I did me, and it wasn't long. They saw it quick and were like, "All right, bro, we need you, help us. Help us." So they were new. They had been in the business forever, but they were new owners. And so the timing was perfect too, right? Like, Bill Gates and those guys, the reason they were able to build their wealth was timing. Timing is everything. Colonel Sanders, if Colonel Sanders tried to release KFC chicken now, tried to start that company, he'd go broke, dude, because now we're in a world of vegetarians and no counting calories, but his timing was perfect. He brought fried chicken to the market right after the war, and families weren't having the home cooked meals and stuff anymore that the way they were before. And so the timing was perfect. And so for me, the timing was perfect to get in this dealership, because they were looking for change. They didn't want to do the same thing their dad had done for the last 30 years. They didn't want to end up like him. They wanted to create something new. So when they saw the spark and the fire in me, they continued to breathe into that. Now, I blew their mind consistently because I'm a visionary and the owners are more analytical. Plus they only knew what they knew too, right? They were programmed a certain way. So when I would say something like, okay, we're going to sell 200 cars next month, they're like, dude, we haven't sold 200 cars in 50 years. I'm like, cool, we're going to sell 200 next month, and then we're going to sell 3, and we're going to sell 4. And I remember going to the owner and going, all right, we're going to sell 6,000 cars this year. He says, dude, you sell 6,000 cars, you can pick whatever car you want to drive as a demo. I'm like, bet. So we sold 6,000 cars that year, and I started driving 700 horsepower supercars that the dealership was paying for. And then 2 years after that, I'm like, we're going to sell 10,000. They're like, dude, we don't even know what to do with you anymore. Just whatever you say. And we went out and we sold 10,000. I told them we were going to sell 1,000 cars in a month. They're like, you're crazy. We sold 1,000 cars in a month, so they never necessarily agreed with me, but they also never got in my way. And I think I established that pretty early, like, you don't want to get in my way.
Well, that's awesome. When the guy pulled you around the side of the building, you could have had a couple responses. This goes back to taking responsibility, right?
Sure.
You can't control his actions, but you can
Right.
control how you respond to him. You didn't get upset. You didn't yell. You didn't throw punches at him. You didn't quit your job. You didn't say, I can't take this. You didn't say it's not fair. You said, cool, I got some haters. Because you and I both know when you have haters, you're headed in the right direction. Just like you said, they're paying attention. They know what you're doing and they don't like it, which means you're changing things.
Yeah, no doubt.
There are a lot of people out there who do like it and they're paying attention too. You put your head down, you went to work, and before you know it, this is what happens. Like there's a quote that I can't remember right now, but at first you're hated, right? And
Sure.
Then there's some indifference, and then all your opposition actually morphs into support.
No doubt.
Like that's if you just keep driving the path, which is exactly what you did. So you built this culture in Kentucky, which most people would like like that's not what they would think when they
Sure.
see you. Like, I mean, I see you show up, you look like, I wouldn't say you belong in San Diego either. You're super well dressed. You're really well put together. You know what you're doing. Like people, I'm sure it changed the dealership there. So now that we've kind of covered the whole story, I want to go into what makes awesome culture. Like what gives you the passion to show up every day and say, we're going to do 400 cars. We're going to do 500 cars. We're going to do 1,000 cars. Because most people would say that's impossible. I'm a visionary as well. So I get it. We just put a number and we're like, we're doing it. We're figuring it out. I'm not paying attention to the obstacles. But how did you do it in real world terms? Because I know so many people are like, it's just not possible. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no doubt, man. So really what I effectively learned over time, belief systems matter. Law of attraction is real. There's a reason that the Bible says when 2 or more come together in my name, so it will be. What we focused on doing was creating a belief system of not just 2, but 10, and then 20, and then 30, and then 40. And ultimately we had 300 employees at the end that all believed the same thing. And that belief system attracts. The universe has no choice but to bend at your will and at your mercy. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't just sit back. It takes ridiculous amounts of energy and work, ridiculous amounts, and constantly continuing to feed the belief. But in order for people to believe in us, we had to believe in them. And that was the biggest switch for us. Most companies, most businesses, most entrepreneurs, most people, what they see is they see the dollar. And they say, hey, I want to make $1. How can I make $1? So then they go out and they make $1, and then they go, oh my gosh, I made $1. How can I make another $1? And once they figure out they can make a few more dollars, they go, okay, if I just had more customers, I could make more dollars. So then they start spending a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to generate customers. Now, once we have a bunch of customers, now when we've got a bunch of dollars that are coming from the customers, the natural progression for any entrepreneur is, well, now I need some people, because if I can get some people, those people can service the customers, which the customers will generate the dollars. So it's really this pyramid, right? This money is the first objective. Customers become objective number 2, and our people become objective number 3. That's pretty much how most businesses are derived. What I went in with, and the owner shared this vision with me, is what if we do it the other way? What if we focus on people, and we get good people, and we pour into our people, and we invest in our people, and we train our people, and we believe in our people, and we care about our people, and we back up our people, and we stand behind our people? What if we get people? If we get enough people, those people are going to drive customers. Customers are going to want to do business with them. They're going to tell their friends to do business with them. They're going to tell their family members to do business with them. They're going to want that. They'll literally attract more customers because they're such good people. And when we have great people that are attracting amazing customers, what does it generate? Dollars. So we just literally flipped it upside down, man. All of our decisions that we made, of course, you track your money, you track your dollars, you have to be financially smart. But all of our decisions were not made based on profit. They were made based on people. And when you start making decisions based on people, that's how you create a culture that generates profits. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense to me. Like when I ran restaurants, it was the exact same, because you train the people well, you make them feel precious, make them feel important, make them feel like they're a champion, and they come to work, they're glowing when they get to work, they're excited to be there, they do a good job, they stop doing all the bad stuff that normally you'd have to discipline them to stop doing, because
Right.
they want to be there, they want to do a good job. So I want to talk about like so you started moving this in the dealership. Like, what are some of the like down and dirty, like nitty gritty things that you did to start pouring into people? And was it awkward at first? Because I know when I've talked to people, they're like, I'm not going to have a pep talk. I'm not going to give them a rally. But I know in car dealerships, you do sales meetings every day. So like, what did you start doing to like pour into people and to really give people this, like the to get it moving?
Yeah. So I followed something that I call LEAD. So I have an acronym for the word lead, and I spell lead with 2 D's, LEADD, right? And so great leaders, if you want to be a great leader, I suggest you follow this process. So the L in lead stands for listen. Your mama told you this a long time ago. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? You should listen twice as much as you talk. And that is wonderful words of wisdom. Leaders that take the time to listen to their people before they speak immediately gain a level of respect and enthusiasm because the person feels heard, right? And in most cases, managers don't ever do that. Managers don't want to listen to their people, but great leaders do. So we start with listening. The E in lead stands for encourage. When you're listening to someone, I want you to listen to them with the intention of encouraging their behavior. Don't listen to disagree. Don't listen to argue against. Don't listen to tell why they're wrong. Listen with the intent to find something good and encouraging about that person. All people have value. All words matter. So if Steve and I are having a conversation, I need to have a very important direct conversation with Steve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get Steve in a room and I'm going to go, Steve, how are you? What's going on? Talk to me. Tell me about your wife. How's your kids? Right? And I'm going to listen to you at first, and then I'm going to say, "Wow, man, that's awesome, Steve. I don't know how it is that you balance your wife, your kids, and all that you do around here. You're such a valuable asset to the company. It's really incredible. I've been watching you the last couple of years, Steve, and I'm so impressed at the different things that you've done. So now that I listen to Steve and then I encourage Steve, guess what I've earned the right to do? The A in lead is advise. Now I've earned the right to advise. So after I've listened to Steve, I've encouraged Steve. Now I can say, on another note, Steve, last night I walked around over on the lot and like half the cars were unlocked. You and I have talked about this, and it's your responsibility to make sure every single door gets locked on every single car before we leave. And we got to treat this place like it's our house, man. Like, this is how we're going to build, right? This is what we're trying to do. So I need you to do that. And Steve, you also told me that you were going to take care of this and you were going to take care of that. And you haven't done that. And we had an agreement that you were going to take care of it, but you haven't done that. So here's what I'm suggesting. We're going to go into the D in lead, which is develop. So I've listened to you, I've encouraged you, I've advised you on the areas that you can grow and get better. And now I'm going to develop you. I'm going to actually spend time. I'm not going to say what most managers, here's what most managers do. Hey, Steve, you left all the freaking doors unlocked last night, buddy. You know you're supposed to lock them and you left them unlocked. You didn't do the thing and you didn't do the thing. Now get out there and freaking take care of it. That's a standard manager. Leader, listen, encourage, advise, take the time to actually develop, right? If I'm going to tell you that there's something you need to do better, you better believe I'm going to take the time to walk you out there and show you how it gets done. Listen, encourage, advise, develop. The last D is daily. You can't do it once a week. You can't do it once a month. You can't just have a Saturday morning sales meeting. It doesn't work like that. It's every single day you have to lead with your wife, with your kids, with your prospects, with your customers, with your employees. If you follow that process, listen, encourage, advise, develop, and do it daily. If you follow that, I promise you, you will develop a culture in your home, a culture in your business. You'll develop a culture, a winning culture all the way around.
That is, I really like that a lot. That takes like some of the tenets from How to Win Friends and Influence People, but puts them into a modern day framework. I love it.
Thank you.
My question would be, which was harder for you? Raising 7 or 8 kids or developing an amazing sales culture at the dealership?
Which was harder? Well, I have to admit, I have a saint of a wife. So my wife has never, ever, ever told me no to any of my dreams, any of my passions. If I've got to work at 90, 100 hours a week, she gets it. She's never stood in the way of my success. So she, for a while there, especially when we were growing that dealership, man, I was grinding, bro. And she homeschools our kids. Like, God gave me a woman that wants nothing. She doesn't want to do anything other than be a mom, dude. Like, she has no desire to travel. She has no desire. She has no so she's living her dream life by being at home with the kids all the time. And that's allowed me to live mine. So I would have to say dealing with my, and I won't even say my millennials, because my millennials are actually pretty easy to get on train and on board, but dealing with some of my seasoned veterans, getting them on board with change is probably way harder than raising 7 kids.
That's awesome. I love it. So if somebody is working at a dealership as a sales manager, maybe they own a dealership and they're listening to this, or maybe they own a business that has a team, right?
Sure.
What is, like, when you go to work at a dealership, what's usually the first thing that you see that's like an easy win that you can just like point them and be like, hey man, and advise them and then direct them on? What's something that you would give to people as an easy tool?
Yeah, there's 3 of them actually. The first thing is most businesses, especially it's worse in the auto industry than probably any other business, but most businesses look at things monthly, right? So we hit the reset button. It's the first of the month, hero to zero, right? You were a hero yesterday. We're at 0 sales today. Get back on it, right? That's pretty standard. So the first thing I always say is, look, dude, business is an infinite game. There is no finish line. It does not end. When you change your perspective on that, we have to start making decisions today that are going to impact us this month, a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Like, you have to start thinking, what decisions am I making? Sometimes we get caught up in short-term thinking. Well, I'm going to screw this customer over now so I can make $1,000 today. All right. Well, you're losing that customer for the next 70 years and everyone they come in contact with for the remainder of all that time. So what is the value of a customer that stays with you for 70 years and brings you all their friends and family? Is that worth more than $1,000? Then you need to probably spend the $1,000 or do the right thing, right? So that's the first thing I do is I get them to shift their mindset from an immediate thinking to a long-term. Simon Sinek talks about it all the time. We're playing an infinite game. Second thing is we start to measure things, even though we're thinking infinitely, we start to measure things daily. I need daily goals and daily targets. Your people need daily goals and daily targets. Those daily goals and daily targets have to be based on actual data, not just a number that you made up in your head because it sounded cool. And that number needs to be different every single day because Tuesday is different than Thursday, which is different than Saturday, which is different than Monday. There are different trends. People do things. They buy in different seasons and different waves depending on where you are as a community. There's things like basketball games or schools in or whatever. So you should always compare. Today is October 2nd, 2020. If I was running a dealership today, in my dealership, there would be a board, and that board would show the amount of cars we sold today is Friday. So the first Friday of October of last year, how many cars did we sell? Not the date. It doesn't need to be the second. It's got to be the same day. So on the first Friday of October of last year, how many cars did we sell? Let's take that number, or how many widgets did you sell? How many pop bottles did you sell? How many buttons or bottle caps, whatever it is that you sold? How many did you sell? Increase that number by 15% and make that your goal. Make that your target for the day, right? Mark it in green when you hit it and celebrate. Mark it in red if you don't and say nothing. You see, there's a huge psychological factor to the colors red and green. We grew up with them. Green check marks, red X's. Green means go, red means stop. So psychologically, when we start putting reds and greens on the board and we celebrate the greens, and here's what I mean by celebrate the greens. You're trying to get behaviors. You want to reinforce good behavior, right?
Absolutely.
Right? You want to reinforce good behavior. I've got lots of kids. What do you do with your kids when they go pee-pee in the potty? Celebrate. Yay! Fisher went pee-pee in the potty. Woo! We give them a little M&M, dude, because we want them to like keep doing that behavior. That doesn't go away just because we got older, man. People love to be celebrated. So when we have a green day, we clap, we cheer, we celebrate that good behavior. Now, if it's a red day, we don't say anything. We just put the number in red on the board. And psychologically, it's like when your parents don't yell at you, you know you're in trouble, but they're just disappointed and they don't say nothing. And you're like, dang, they're really mad. I should probably do something. They didn't even yell at me or nothing. And that's what the red does on the board. So they start to see 2 or 3 red days. Your team internally will start to shift. They're like, bro, like, we're letting Steve down. He's pouring into us. He's doing this. He's investing in us. And we can't even get a green day. Like, come on, guys. We got to, like, they start to do it without you having to do it. You don't have to say nothing, which is great. Now, if you see enough reds, you might need to sit down and go, hey, Steve, how are you? What's going on? How's the wife? How's the kids, right? You might need to have that conversation so you can extract what the problem is. But ultimately, it normally will correct itself. So the first thing we do is shift the mindset to infinite. The second thing that we do is we create daily targets, not monthly or yearly. Plus, when you have a monthly or yearly target, how often can you celebrate?
Once a month, once a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, forget that. We want to be able to celebrate every day because people always go off their last win. The third thing that we do at that point, so once we get the board in place, we got an infinite mindset, then we change the way that they start their day. So as you know, with my show, I'm a firm believer if you change the way people start their day, it makes a massive impact in their life. So it's the same with your business as it is as a person. The way you start the day is the most important component of your business. And so we go in and we're like, okay, 8:30, you have a sales meeting. 9 o'clock, you meet with your leader. 9:30, here's what you do. 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, all the way through to lunch. People too often are told what to do and maybe even showed how to do it, but they're rarely told when. When makes a huge difference. If I teach somebody to do something so they know how and they know what, and the only time I check on them is at 7 o'clock at night when they're getting ready to leave. I go, hey, did you do the 20 phone calls and the 10 emails and the 5 videos that you were supposed to do? I got busy. I'm sorry. I had to. Right. No. They didn't get busy, dude. They just were doing too much Facebook flipping for the day. So if we tell them, okay, great, 8:30 you're going to meet, which we do meet every single day. 9 o'clock you're going to meet with your team leader and go through your individual CRM to see what we can help you with. 10 o'clock you're going to stage your appointments. You're going to walk the inventory. You're going to make sure you know where everything is. At 11 o'clock you're going to make your phone calls, your emails, send out your videos. When you're done with that, you can go grab lunch. Now
You're giving them a
when
framework.
7 o'clock comes, they've not only are they already done with everything, but they've had 6 more hours to add hopefully more successful things on top. So those are really the first 3 things: structuring the morning, changing that mindset, and getting that board up.
I love it. Those are all really actionable steps that anybody listening to this can apply in any business or in their personal life. I love it. And you touched on Rise and Grind. So that's what I wanted to move to next. So Rise and Grind started for you as a passion project, I believe. Do you
Sure.
want to just tell us just a little bit about it and like how it started? Because it's all about starting your morning off correctly, which I have a morning routine. I'm a big fan of having a morning routine. I think it is something that is incredibly powerful. When I quit my job, it was the first thing that I did.
Sure.
I was like, this is what I'm doing every morning. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be and your beliefs
Yeah,
around it.
yeah. Morning routines. You can't read any book on success without somebody saying something about their morning routines. There's a whole book called Make My Bed, that's about or Make Your Bed, and it's him just talking about doing that one step, how it reset him no matter where he was in the world, this military guy. Um, Morning routines are everything. They are your psychological reset button. They're usually the only space that you're going to have all day to yourself, especially when you have as many kids as I do. So the morning routine is so incredibly powerful. And as I learned the power of it, and I was in this dealership and I was basically teaching all of my associates the power of morning routines. And I was sharing with them books and audios and all of those things. And they would ask me, Glenn, how do you have so much energy? How do you do this? How do you balance this? How do you balance that? I'm like, bro, it's freaking the morning routines, everything. And so I was teaching that to my associates. There came a day where I was flipping through social or something, and it was just so negative in the feed. And I was just thinking, golly, man, if people would just change the way they start their day, golly, this would look so different. And so instead of just complaining about it, I was like, well, be about it, bro. Why don't you if you want to, help people do that, then do it, commit. And so I tried to figure out what time I could do it. I was like, well, when can I fit it in where there's not going to be any kids, there's not going to be any of this, there's not going to be any of that, so on and so forth. And I landed on 5:30 a.m. was like the only time I could guarantee nothing would ever get in the way. Because once I commit to something, that's it. And so I was like, all right, I can help people start their day and I can learn some more discipline. Because I think at that time I was sleeping in till probably like 6, or something like that. And I was like, I'd be better disciplined if I could wake up a little bit earlier. I could have more time to do my stuff. And so it was self-serving in a way, but at the same time, I wanted to help other people change the way they start their day. And so, yeah, man, January 6, 2018 went live for the first time in my utility closet upstairs with the water heater just on the back side of the camera where nobody could see it, in a little 4x8 room, little 4x8 storage room. The lights were bright and I was like, and it was crazy. And I had this chalkboard right here, right behind me that said hashtag Rise and Grind. And fast forward to today, we've done 719 episodes. I'm sitting in my big, beautiful studio. That camera got
Nice.
moved. But my big, beautiful studio, I got my different camera angles, and we still have the chalkboard up as a reminder. It just reminds me every day of how we just started in a utility closet, just trying to serve a void that we had in ourselves and that we knew other people had as well, right? And yeah, man, we've had incredible guests on. I've traveled the world. We've built an entire company around it. I've got 6 employees now. It's
I
crazy,
love it.
dude.
I love it. I mean, 719 shows. I want to point out, because I know so many people are like, I want to go do something. I have this idea, right? But ideas are cheap.
Sure.
Everybody's got an idea. You took action on it. What kept you going? Because I know, like, probably the first week you were like, I want to sleep in.
Sure.
I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to go hang out with the water heater. What kept
Yeah,
you
no doubt.
going? And what kept you moving? And then, like, I would go ahead and answer that. I have one more, but I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 things on that. So commitment, like when I commit, so commitment doesn't care how you feel. All right.
Amen.
Commitment does not care how you feel. Um, Tired, sick, unprepared, stayed up late, different time zone, whatever, dude. Commitment don't care. If you're making a commitment, that's it. And so I'm a firm believer in that. So I knew before I did the first episode, I was like, bro, are you committed? Not halfway in, halfway out. Are you willing? And a friend of mine, oh my God, Godeski, her last name is Godeski. She's a Olympic runner. She's an endurance runner. She does like those long, ridiculous ultra marathons. She's crazy. And one thing that she shared with me is she was like, and I've always taken it to heart, is she said, it's okay to say no to a goal. Like if you're like, my goal is to make $50 million, if that's the goal, now I want you to take the time and look at the energy and effort and the commitment level you're going to have to make the $50 million. And then at that point, you might go, I'm not really interested in doing all of that. Maybe I want the goal to be $5 million, right? Like, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. What's not okay is to set a big goal and not commit and quit. Not okay. So I looked at it and was like, am I willing to do this forever if that's what God wants me to do, before I ever clicked the first button? You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew it was a long-term investment from the get-go. So that helped. I think a lot of people sometimes just jump in. They think they're like, oh, we're going to win. We're going to make some money. We're going to do this. And then that's why they quit 6 weeks later, or, 6
Right.
months later, even when they're not seeing the results, because they're doing it for the result. I was never doing it for the result. I was doing it because I committed to, because that's what I committed to do. And so that was a big part of it. The second part of it, though, was it wasn't long. I really have a heart for people feeling invisible because of when I was homeless. Homelessness, a lot of people think homelessness sucks. Homelessness sucks because you don't have food, or you don't have shelter, or you don't have money. But really, homelessness sucks because you become invisible, man. Like, people don't want to make eye contact with you. They look above your head. They look around your ears. They look down around. They don't want to feel the guilt of telling you no. They don't want to feel your shame or your pain. They don't know if you're going to mug him, right? Like, I don't blame them, but you become literally invisible. You start to blend in, and you see all this wealth and people around you. And it's a very hopeless and desperate place when you feel that way. And so I have a big heart for that. and I was doing an episode, and that's why every episode I say good morning to as many people as I can that I see in the stream. I'm like, good morning, Steve. Good morning, because I want you to hear your name and I want you to know that I see you, that you're not invisible. Just because it's a Facebook stream doesn't change the fact that you still need validation that you are seen. And so I did that one day, and I got a message. A guy called me, and he said, I was sitting in my car with a gun, about to kill myself, and I went onto Facebook to post my last goodbye, and your show popped up. This was it. He was at 2:30 in the morning. He was in Arizona, and I was here in Kentucky. So it was 2:30. It was 2:30 at night for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, your show popped up and you said my name. And he said, when you said my name, it reminded me that I have value and that somebody sees me. And so he went back home to his family. He had a daughter, he had a wife. And that moment basically transformed his life. He's been sober ever since. And so put the two together. I had made a commitment. It was what I was going to do. And then when I saw God use me to save the life of another human being, and not just him, the trickle effect that that has on his wife and his daughter, like, you can't stop me now, dude. I'll never stop.
I love it. That is a really, really powerful story. I mean, the thing that I get out of that, and I see so many people, they're trying to measure a result, right? They're like, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to make $5 million. And if they're not making $5 million in 6 weeks, they're like, this doesn't work, this sucks, I'm out, blah, blah, blah. It's not about the result. The result comes from the action and from doing the action and from making the commitment and showing up. And because of that, like, there are results out there that you can't see. I mean, that guy called you. You could see that result, but for him, there's probably 2,000 other people that you've had the very similar effect on, that you'll never hear from because they don't have your phone number, they're not going to reach out, but you've changed their life at least a little bit. And that's what I would say to encourage anybody out there who's doing something. Just because you don't have all the results yet, the key word is yet. So that's a really, really cool story. If you guys haven't checked out Rise and Grind, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so if you go to glenlundy.com, that will link to all my stuff, to our Facebook group. It's got over 30,000 members in our hashtag Rise and Grind Facebook group. The show, Monday through Friday, you can connect to that through there. Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff.
Awesome. Glen, it has been a pleasure to have you on and chat with you. Is there anything else you would like to say to people out there listening?
No, man, this has been great. And I guess if I did want to say just one thing, if you don't have an understanding of the spiritual side of yourself, if you don't have an understanding that we are three-dimensional, not two, right? It's not just mind and body, it's mind, body, spirit. If you don't have that, I just suggest that you seek that. I suggest that you try to learn, because that was the shift for me. And I studied everything, man, from Buddhism to Christianity to Scientology. And I am not a fan in any way, shape, or form of religion, but I am a massive believer that we are spiritual beings uniquely made by the God of the universe to be the absolute best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be, for one reason and one reason only, so that we can go out and make an impact in other people's lives. I think that's the meaning of life. So I just suggest, if anybody's listening, I don't know who that's for, try to get a better understanding of the spiritual side of your life and watch how it transforms everything for you.
Awesome. Those are super powerful words, and I I agree. Like,
Mm.
we are here to have an impact. If you're feeling empty or having a hard time, go impact somebody's lives, go make a difference, and all of that will disappear.
That's it.
Glenn, thank you so much for being on. And to everybody listening, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been an awesome episode, and it has been my pleasure. Until next time, guys, take action, change lives, and make money. We'll see you soon.